Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. And today we're covering Borderlands, Mr. Torgue's Arena of Badassery. Should you back it? Should you not? What's the game? All the details, pledge levels, all the stuff, and timestamps in the little video bar down below. But starting off the bat, this is a game where you're basically going to be rolling dice to take out baddies. It's that simple. Learn to Play has a great video covering, in 20 minutes covering the all how to play, giving you a general overview of everything going on in the game, what the general cycling is, what you're doing in your turn, how it's basically taking the gameplay of Borderlands, the video game that has gone through how many iterations now? 3 iterations. I've played the first one, the most recent one. I haven't played the second one, I think. I played 2 of them. I know I played 2 of them. Either way, this is bringing you the arena-style aspect of Borderlands. It's not going to give you the giant, wide adventuring and questing and all those other aspects going on in the game. Rather, it's bringing you the characters. It's bringing you the various baddies you'll be fighting. It's bringing you the wide amount of weapons, although guaranteed not to be the actual wide amount of weapons you'd find in the actual game of Borderlands, and then bringing you a lot of dice rolling to simulate the general RNG aspect of the game, the general random damage of just blasting bad guys and seeing what sticks and what doesn't. And it's going to be using the React system from Monster Fight Club that they used in their previous game. They used it in Cyberpunk Red. It's bringing the React system of just having a variety of dice, a variety of different actions that you'll be having on your characters, utilizing to activate those dice, adding various skill checks to those aspects, to those dice, and trying to hit a target number on various bad guys. That's basically the high level of what you're doing. You're taking into account your abilities of your actual character. You're taking into account the abilities of whatever weapon you're utilizing, and you're taking into account the abilities of whatever you're fighting against as you figure out what you're doing. Are you hitting? Are you not? Are you missing? Are you fumbling? Are characters adjusting to the game around you? Are they going to be charging towards you, dealing whatever damage they need to do? Are you trying to stay alive while you kill the bad guys, while you generate loot on the map? And then if you're playing the campaign, you're going to be trying to be mindful as well of the vending machines in between each level. Vending machines where you can gather more goods, more weapons, more medkits, more legendary things, trying to buy weapons, then eventually sell them for the price you need as you go through the campaign, slowly leveling up your characters through their own individual skill tree as well. So there's a lot of things going on in this game. General idea is you're in an arena, and your characters are all working together to fight and kill the bad guys, to basically take them out tactically between the abilities going on the board, between positioning yourself, between rolling dice, taking into account your weapons damage and things like that. And that's an individual single shot scenario or whatnot, but you can play it as a campaign as well, where you level up and escalate both your character as well as the getting more gear, more stuff going through the campaign. And the enemies are going to be driven by various scenarios that you dive into. Each game is going to have their own individual scenario, and then the scenario is going to have an announcement deck that triggers the sequencing of what's happening. Are more enemies being added, what events are being thrown at you, different things like that. And it has a difficulty scaling in the sense that you can be adding more and more difficult cards to that announcement deck in case you find that the skill level is either too hard or not hard enough for what you're looking for. It has that difficulty scaling built in. Past that, it comes down to just the amount of characters, the amount of miniatures, the amount of everything, the amount of weapons going on in the game. And that's a good time to talk about the pledge level, starting off with the $85 pledge that will not give you any single stretch goal or anything like that. So if you want stretch goals for this game, the $85 pledge will not give you that. Take into account heavily before you back this pledge, because on a 120 MSRP, $85 on a 120 MSRP is not a bad price in and of itself. But as soon as you factor in and compare that to the fact that once you're paying shipping as well, you're going to be paying the $20 shipping plus, depending on where you're getting or what you're doing. So you're looking at $105 on a $125 MSRP, which means if you're looking at the retail base pledge over here, if you're looking at the plain retail arena casualty pledge, this is one where you will be able to get it cheaper in retail if you get that base pledge. So in general, we'll get into the whole should you back it later, but I would not recommend that base pledge unless you just really just want to get your hands on it sooner, because then sure, go for it, but it's not the way to go. You can see over here I've locked in a 135 pledge at the moment because there are early birds at play as well. There have been 2 early birds. The first one, which is already expired, which this one over here, Steve the Psycho, heyo, free gift. This one, no, not this one. This one is not. There's one, I can't see it. One of the optional buys was an early bird that already expired, and they've already added a new one for Steve the Psycho. If you want to get this one, this is still going all the way through December 13th, so you can check that out if you want to get the game. Head on there, you can get this early, well, you get this add-on free now, which will later be, well, more expensive later as you get that. Past that, the next pledge level is going to be the 135 pledge level. The $135 pledge level on a 180 MSRP. In and of itself, the same logic applies. We'll get to that as well. But the general idea here is this is where you're getting all these stretch goals. So if you want all those stretch goals that will potentially be released later as separate things, very few things in this campaign have been labeled as exclusive, so we'll talk about that too. But overall, 135 is going to be giving you the base pledge. So you're starting off with the base pledge, all the things you got in the base pledge, the miniatures, the rule book and campaign book, the various bad guys you're fighting, all these skags, the rule book with campaign, the double-sided hexes, and it's worth noting the various hexes they have. If you watch some of the Learn to Play videos, or if you see what they have, they look very plain. They've addressed this in the FAQ that they are going to be adding graphics to the tiles. Granted, we don't know what they're adding or to what extent, but in theory, things are being added there to sprucing up the various tiles on the board. You're going to have the skill trees for the various characters. You'll have the loot bag. You have over 400 cards representing all the weapons and things you're going to be going through, the announcement decks, all the stuff you're going to be doing, the event decks, tons of stuff over here across these 400 cards. And 400 cards, I mean, this is Borderlands. Borderlands is known for having a million different weapons. And so the more gear they have, the more weapons, the more things they have in that genre, the more it'll capture the feel of the video game and just the craziness of the weapon system in Borderlands. From there, you're getting these Skags at the Gates expansion. That's the second thing you're getting at this True Badass pledge level. So you're getting the Skags at the gate with another 15 Skag miniatures, the big game hunt campaign, more hex tiles, new game cards, all of that is in the expansion over there. And then we start moving to these stretch goals. So, these are all the stretch goals that, again, you only get at the 135 pledge or higher. We have Krieg the Vault Hunter, we have Psycho Pose 3, which are alternate poses over here. They're basically, the upgrades are divided into, the stretch goals they're unlocking are divided into three things. There's new stuff for the game, there's upgrades or game component upgrades or modifications, alternate poses, things like that. And then they're also having optional buys being added as stretch goals, meaning you don't get something for the game, you get the ability to buy something else for the game. But over here, these are the free stretch goals. That's what you have over here. We have Krieg the Vault Hunter, we have Claptrap, which is basically essential for a Borderlands game. We have Psycho Pose 3, we have Martyr, we have the Scar Bounty, Shiv Bounty, more characters, we have the free vending machine model, we have more poses, more bounties, more characters, we have Lilith as a Vault Hunter, which feels essential, we have Zero, we have Brick, we have Tina, Tiny Tina, just tons of things being added here. And again, we have, how many days we have left in the campaign? We currently have 18 days to go, and we're likely to hit a whole lot more as well as far as things being unlocked slowly but surely, so expect this list to only grow as the campaign continues across those 18 days, 1.5 million, maybe something, we'll see. Which brings us to the optional buys, and optional buys, there are a lot of optional buys, and this is where your 135 plus shipping pledge can easily jump to 200 plus depending on what you want to add on, so factor very heavily what you actually want for the game, what you need for the game, what's working for you, because there's a lot of stuff here. And speaking frankly, while a lot of the miniature poses look amazing, a lot of the scenery pledges, at least to myself, the scenery stuff looks very underwhelming, personally speaking. So we have the Ravenous Wattle Gobbler over here for $20 on a $30 MSRP. We have the Skags at the Gates, $45, $60 on MSRP, and again, a lot of these things, almost very few things, if anything, have been said that it's going to be truly exclusive. The Gobbler over here, they said should be exclusive-ish, meaning it's not going to be available in wide retail, might be available at their site or conventions or things like that, but most things in this campaign have not been listed as exclusive, so price is the main factor, with a few exceptions such as the Water Gobbler, which would be harder to get, but still not impossible to get. From there we have the acrylic tokens, $25 and a $30 MSRP, giving you more, acrylic tokens, upgraded tokens for the game. We have the Monster Fight Club objective pack. This is where we start moving to these objectives that, again, to me personally, don't seem to convey the same level of detail as a lot of the miniatures do. Granted, what we're seeing here is not necessarily final to the game, but it certainly makes jumping in on $30 for a bunch of these objective tokens a little more of a, is they worth it for me or not? It's a personal thing, at least, as far as how I like the art. We have the Monster Fight Club Obstacles pack, another $30 for another 8 barrels and 7 tires, more stuff to make your board game pop. We have Steve the Psycho. Like I said already, this is $10 and a $15 MSRP, but it will be free if you back this game before December 13th, even if you upgrade later in the Pledge Manager. And that is all we have as of right now for the optional buys, although we still have one being potentially unlocked in the stretch goals. Let's see if we can scroll down over here to the stretch goals, where it's showing you what we're slowly getting, and down over here at the 940, if we can keep scrolling, here we go. We're going to have Tink Camp being unlocked at 940k, this bounty expansion adding 9 Tinks to be revealed as unlocks for $30. We don't have that one in front of us just yet, but we have that overall. And then we have shipping, which is going to be run $17-$20 for the base for the USA, and $22-$25 for the full True Badass pledge, and that will obviously only grow over there. And then we have the whole VAT over here being covered as far as any details relevant to you for VAT. That is overall what we're seeing over here between the base pledge, between stretch goals, between all the unlocks, between everything else. That's what you're getting for Borderlands Mr. Torque's Arena of Badassery, which brings us fairly quickly, this is a fairly short video today, brings us to the should you back it, should you not, all of that. And it's not 100% clear. although I think it's a fairly safe back. Fairly safe, not 100% clear. See, Monster Fight Club has a few campaigns under their belts, but from what they have, the only thing that's really comparable to Borderlands is Cyberpunk Red over here. We have Tentacle Town, which already released, but this is a very different genre of game, and any data relevant to that is not really relevant to how a miniatures-heavy campaign will fare. We have a bunch of tabletop scenery and stuff, but again, those aren't really comparable. We have Cyberpunk Red, which is comparable, but hasn't delivered, so isn't a relevant comparison point as far as, is this the best time to get the game? Should you get it at retail? Should you wait in the secondhand market? How will it hold up as far as if this is a game not for you? Can you sell it for what you got or not? All those questions are still a little bit in guessing land, although the starting baseline is the fact that this campaign has 6,000 backers, 7,000 backers, and closing in on $1 million in the first few days is this first starting baseline to give you the idea that there is clearly a demand for this game. You see, demand is a huge part of these conversations. There's usually two parts that come down to whether or not a game will hold its value. The first is the general demand. Do people want the game to begin with? If they don't want the game, it doesn't matter how hard the game is to get. If people don't want a game, then it's not going to hold its value. And the second thing is what the pricing is like. Are there exclusives in the campaign? Is the price better on Kickstarter than it is at retail? Those are the other factors, because again, if people want the game, but they can get it cheaper down the road, there's no reason that your copy will hold its value because you overpaid for yours. And to take into account over this with Borderlands, the first thing is the demand is clearly there, and that will translate to demand down the road as well. Kickstarter demand is always a small single focus point in time, and that demand will hold over down the road. If Kickstarter has the demand down the road when this game launches, when it arrives, when it shows up on your doorstep a year and a half from now, whatever it is, there will still be people who want this game, who missed out on the Kickstarter, who did not back the game. Which brings us to the second question, which is the price point. And that goes back to something I said at the beginning. Do not back this pledge at the $85 level. I mean, you could if you want, but you are overpaying compared to going to retail, and there's clearly enough demand here that this should, barring any surprises of something happening, this should go to retail. I see no reason why it would not go to retail, which means you're looking at overpaying for that core pledge. You'll get it earlier, so that's nice. You're supporting the company, that's nice. From a pure price point, the base core pledge, there's no reason to get that one. They're very clearly transparent. You will not get stretch goals with this. They say it in the pledge, they say it on the page, they say it multiple times. You will not be getting stretch goals with this base pledge. Which brings us to the question on the 135 pledge. If you scroll down, getting the extra expansion, one of the add-ons already included, the other ones you can choose to buy or not, we'll get to that shortly, and then all the stretch goals as well. As far as exclusives, very little, if anything, has been guaranteed as exclusive. If you go through the comments, there's 1,296 comments over there, and I haven't gone through every single one, but I do know how to do a Control F through the exclusives. Yes, you do have to sadly click read more until you get to the bottom of the page, but then you do a Control F for exclusive, you go through that, and they have not guaranteed any exclusivity at all on any of these things, talking about how they will be available later down the road, maybe in expansions, retail, all that stuff, but they'll still cost more money. That 180 MSRP, what you're looking at over here, you're looking at a 180 MSRP, your shipping price is going to bring you to roughly 155, 160 or so for the pledge. That in itself is not a good enough deal, but when you factor in all the stuff you're getting, and how much this stuff would cost if it shows up at retail, it is an if. It's not a guarantee that it's exclusive, but nor is it a guarantee that'll be available later. But if you factor in all the pricing of these things and how they're pricing stuff out, then these will cost more of the MSRP basis, as well as the fact that there's not a guarantee of just how much will show up at retail. The general game will show up at retail. What shows up as far as extras, optional buys, all of that depends on what they can bundle, what there's a demand for. There's only so many different sub-products of a game you can actually have, and so that, I would say, the overall pledge is the 135 pledge is a safer bet to go with, both in terms of guaranteeing that you'll get things that may not be available down the road, as well as the amount of content you're going to be getting as stretch goals and how much they'll be separately, even if they do bundle and sell them. And then as far as the expansions, it's a little bit of the same thing. There's nothing's a guarantee as far as availability. The Ravenous Wild Gobbler is a little bit more exclusive, but if you're looking at, the Skags the Gates is part of that base pledge, so don't get it again. The acrylic tokens, the Monster Fight Club objective pack, all these things over here, the question as always is, will they show up down the road? And even though they're not guaranteed to show up, the pricing, the $30 and a $40 MSRP, that's not great, but they may not show up at all. So they're a bit more of a risk on these optional buys. I would say if you want them for yourself, I'd go for them. If you don't want them for yourself, it is a risk. They may well hold their value. If they don't show up in retail, if the company doesn't sell them down the road because they're just too much work or this or that, and they end up being Kickstarter exclusive, then very often these kinds of things hold their value plenty for the thousands of people that want the game in the secondhand market, that want the game later and can't get the stuff. Then they'll do a great job holding their value. But they more strongly fall into the risk camp because it does depend on that availability down the road. So overall, if you're going to get it, I recommend the True Badass Pledge. I think it is a safer bet. As far as the add-ons, I would recommend going only for what you specifically want for yourself, because it might hold its value, it might not. It's more of a risk there. That is everything Borderlands from what we know so far. Again, it's basically a game where you're going to be rolling dice and trying to take out bad guys. That's not a bad thing. I like Zombicide, one of my favorite systems in general. Rolling dice on its own is not a problem. The question is what the game around it does. And I have not played Borderlands, so I can't comment on my own personal experience of the game, but this does have a lot of powers and abilities between your characters, between the cards, the weapons you have, between the enemies you're fighting, and the question is how much tactical play is there on the table? What is the sense of escalation as you go through a campaign, as you level up your characters, as the bad guys come at you, because you have to level up, but the bad guys have to level up right there along with you, or the game just becomes very stupid very, very quickly. Overall, I'm intrigued, but time will tell as far as actually how the game goes. In any case, until next time, I am Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, have a good one.